Wrestlers can have moments in time where they connect with an audience, get some momentum behind them, and turn themselves into stars. On the other side of this, though, there are times when these opportunities end in disappointment and a talent is left scratching their head as live audiences don't react and TV audiences change the channel quicker than when I do when my wife walks in and I'm watching NXT 2.0. It's not what it looks like! With that in mind, I'm Adam Wilborn from What Culture, and these are 10 wrestlers that bombed twice. Number 10. MABEL and VISCERA. Nelson Frazier never clicked with audiences quite as well as he did during his initial run as part of the rapping babyface Men on a Mission tandem. From there, each character tweak and new gimmick fell flatter than Andy Murray's favorite alligator. While some superstars bomb because a company has little faith in them, the first lull of Frazier's career came because WWE put faith in him. Spectacularly, MABEL would be released by the promotion barely 6 months after his King of the Ring win. He would make his full-time return to the company at the 99 Rumble, soon taking on the Viscera persona as part of The Undertaker's ministry. By August 2000, Frazier would again be gone from WWF, and subsequent returns as the world's largest love machine and Big Daddy V both absolutely tanked. Number 9. Jinder Mahal. Whether it was at the side of the Great Khali, against the Great Khali, or as part of 3MB, Jinder Mahal's first WWE run, which started in 2011, got progressively worse before the performer was released from his contract in mid-2014. Of course, Jinder's return to the company 2 years later famously, or should that be infamously, led to him defeating Randy Orton at Backlash 2017 to become WWE Champion. One cannot argue the incredible shape that Mahal got himself into by the time of that return, thanks chicken and broccoli, but even the biggest of Jinder fans would surely find it tough to claim the modern-day Maharaja's run as WWE champ was anything but a complete failure. Jinder made the WWE title picture into must-miss TV. AJ Styles brought his painful 170-day reign to an end on a November 2017 episode of SmackDown. Number 8. Mordecai and Kevin Thorn. Furtick began appearing in SmackDown vignettes to hype the impending arrival of Mordecai in 2004, a religious nut who was out to punish any and all sinners, and was earmarked for a WrestleMania 21 match against The Undertaker. Instead, though, Mordecai's run on the main roster lasted barely 2 months before he was sent back to OVW, where he'd be released almost immediately. That was until WWE relaunched ECW. Oh, good. There, Furtick would resurface as Kevin Thorn, a vampire character who was intended to be aligned with Gangrel before those plans were changed. Much like 95% of the WWE iteration of ECW, Thor's time there was a dud, and he'd be sent back to OVW in early 2008 and would depart WWE entirely the following January. Number 7. Isaac Yankem and Fake Diesel. As Kane, Glenn Jacobs portrayed one of the greatest creations in WWE history and rightly landed himself a spot in the company's Hall of Fame in 2021. Of course, nowadays, he's of course just a bell end on Twitter. Prior to becoming the Big Red Machine, though, Glenn's initial forays into the World Wrestling Federation landed him with 2 personas he will be eager to forget. First up on that front was Isaac Yankem DDS, the villainous dentist of Jerry Lawler. The Yankem character debuted in mid-1995 and soon became embroiled in Lawler's feud with Bret Hart. What is your obsession with occupational gimmicks, Vince, you mad old bastard? Unsurprisingly, DDS was off TV by April 96, but resurfacing that September, Jacobs was then tasked with taking over the Diesel shtick from a departed Kevin Nash. That was officially just a bag of wank. Number 6. Alberto Del Rio and Alberto El Patron. Del Rio was pushed hard in WWE, winning the Royal Rumble just 5 months after making his in-ring debut. A WrestleMania 27 match with the World Heavyweight Champion Edge would follow, a Money in the Bank briefcase win would happen in July, and Del Rio would cash in on CM Punk to become the WWE Champion at SummerSlam 2011. Despite tangling with all of the company's top stars and amassing 4 World Champion reigns, Alberto Alberto would be fired for unprofessional conduct in August 2014. By October 2015, Del Rio made a well-received return to WWE at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view, answering John Cena's open challenge and becoming the new US champ. That run quickly fell flat though, and ADR was granted his release just 11 months after re-signing with WWE. He would bomb again just over a year later, although this time for very different reasons. Having unified the Impact World Championship and the Global Force Wrestling Championship as Alberto El Patron, the star would be stripped of his gold and suspended by Impact Wrestling in July 2017 due to a domestic abuse incident involving then-partner Paige. It didn't take long for Impact to outright fire El Patron, with him being released the following April after no-showing a cross-promotional show that also featured Lucha Underground. Number 5. Michael McGillicutty and Curtis Axel. If only Joe Hennig could have been, well, Joe Hennig. We'll never know if the son of Mr. Perfect and the grandson of Larry the Axe could have become a serious player in the industry, but he'd have had a hell of a better chance of doing so if he wasn't lumbered with the ludicrous Michael McGillicutty moniker when he turned up in the original game show iteration of NXT in 2010. Cue infamous Genesis of McGillicutty promo. Sure, his initial main roster run as part of the Nexus saw him become a WWE Tag Team Champion, but the third generation star was back in NXT barely a year later. After 2 years away from the main roster, the Minnesota native returned to Raw under the guise of Curtis Axel and under the stewardship of Paul Heyman. Despite holding the IC title for 5 months, Axel became an afterthought on WWE programming, and it didn't take long for the Axeman to start doing daft bollocks like Axelmania, the Social Outcasts, and later the Miztourage and the B-Team. Number 4. El Gigante and Giant Gonzalez. By all accounts, George Gonzalez was a lovely bloke. Unfortunately, he was also an awful wrestler. Billed as 8 foot tall and 460 pounds, it is easy to see why any and all wrestling promoters would be tripping over themselves to bring the Argentinian into their promotion. After knee problems brought a halt to Gonzalez's NBA career before it could even get going, Ted Turner decided to take a punt on the Giant and sign him to WCW in 1989. With barely a year's training under his belt, the then 24-year-old made his WCW bow at Capital Combat Return of the RoboCop in May 1990. Despite mixing it up on TV and live events with top stars such as the Four Horsemen, Sting, Lex Luger, Paul Orndorff, Junkyard Dog, the Steiner Brothers, and the smooth as silk Bobby Eaton, it just never clicked for El Gigante as the top-tier player in WCW. Skip ahead to the WWF Royal Rumble 1993, and George, as Giant Gonzalez, arrived in Vince McMahon's sports entertainment juggernaut and was immediately paired off with the Undertaker. Following successive losses to the Dead Man at that year's WrestleMania and SummerSlam, Gonzalez was out of WWF by October 93 after failing to substantially impress company higher-ups. Number 3. Ultimate Warrior. Some might argue that the Ultimate Warrior's solitary run as WWF champ was a dud, but it's tough to properly poo-poo this initial WWE run. Poo-poo. Even if you take into account the post-SummerSlam 1991 suspension/resignation, the return at WrestleMania 8, and the post-SummerSlam 1992 drug test failure and exit that caused. What was totally farcical, though, was Warrior's extremely brief WWF 1996 run and his not quite as brief but still super short WCW run in 1998. Amidst plentiful hype, that 96 return saw the Ultimate One show up to dominate Hunter Hearst Helmsley at WrestleMania 12. I wonder whatever happened to that guy. Just 6 matches and barely 3 months later, though, Warrior was fired after no-showing several house shows. Skipping ahead to 98, the real-life Jim Hellwig had a dreadful 6-month run in WCW that's best remembered for spooky shit and a god-awful rematch with Hulk Hogan at that year's Halloween Havoc. Number 2. Psycho Sid. Upon landing in the then WWF as Sid Justice in mid-91, the famed softball enthusiast could have feasibly made for a great monster heel world champion. Feeling fresh and unlike anything on the roster at times, Sid's quest for the WWF Championship at that point just fell short thanks to fellow heel Ric Flair and the Nature Boys' legendary Royal Rumble 1992 victory. Justice would depart WWF shortly after his WrestleMania 8 show showdown with Hulk Hogan, but a return to the promotion would eventually happen in 1995. As part of what would become a 2-year stint with the Federation this time around, Sid, now known as Psycho Sid, would amass 2 reigns as the WWF champion. Sadly, both of these reigns flopped hard. The first world title win came at Survivor Series 96, where Sid defeated Shawn Michaels for the gold simply because the Heartbreak Kid refused to drop the company's biggest prize to Vader. Still, Sid would end up back with the WWF Championship in time for WrestleMania 13, where he and The Undertaker headlined the showcase of the Immortals with the lowest buy rate in history, and shit the bed. Yeah. Number 1, Jeff Jarrett. Ain't he great? Yeah, kind of. Sometimes. Across his time in WCW and TNA, Jeff Jarrett is in the record books as a 10-bloody-time world champion. As an in-ring talent, the third-generation star was undoubtedly a great mechanic, a trusted hand, and could work with pretty much anyone on the card. A decent talker who could generate steady heat, even if said he often relied on the easy out of guitar shots. Nobody can say that Jeff Jarrett was bad. The problem is, the Chosen One was one of those talents who makes for a solid upper mid-card heel rather than being the person to steer the ship at the top of the mountain. In the space of the company's final year, Jeff won WCW's top prize 4 times. The World Heavyweight Champion for a cumulative 59 days. Jarrett's time on top did 0 to halt WCW's nosedive. For his 6 reigns as the man in TNA, the blame very much can lie with Jeff, though, for he was the person who co-founded the promotion and so often handled the creative. A total of 1,006 days leading the charge there, JEFF again struggled to be any sort of genuine double D, double R, double A, double W. I'm trying to spell the word draw. And that's our list. Did we miss any out? Let us know in the comment section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to What Culture Wrestling, wherever you get your podcasts from, for daily wrestling podcasts. Plus, you can let us know your thoughts on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. And you can follow me on there at Adam Wilborn. Thanks for watching. I've been Adam from What Culture, and I'll see you soon.